All right. Good morning, everybody. It is Sunday, August 22nd. I'm on the line with a past LTV graduate, Mr. Tony Anderson. Welcome aboard, Tony. Thanks for coming through and spending a little time with me this morning. And we're just going to do a little impromptu interview about his old experiences. His experience going through LTV to getting a tech job. The purpose of this is to really inspire those out there that may be on the verge of giving up because things aren't happening as fast as they thought, or perhaps maybe they think it's a little too rough. And this brother is a really good brother. And he's going to lace you guys with some game on how he went through his journey and what he went through. And we're just going to go through an interview, and I'm going to try to get in the nooks and crannies just to expose a little bit of insight, bring that out to where you got whoever's seeing this will be able to realize that they too can do it. But anyway, Mr. Tony, how were you introduced to Lifting the Veil, and when did you make your decision to enroll in the program?
I got introduced to the Lifting the Veil Academy from, I was listening to Erica Williams one day. It was on a Sunday afternoon. I was working. So at the time I had a handyman business. So I was at a client's, in a client's backyard doing some landscaping. And I just started listening to Erica Williams. A friend of mine told me about her, and so I was listening to one of her YouTube videos, and Sub-Zero was she was interviewing Sub-Zero, and so I listened to that, and it kind of piqued my interest, and then but I never didn't pursue it, and then probably about a month later. Again, I was listening to YouTube, and I was listening to brother by the name of I think it's O'Shea Jackson. He on Sundays he used to have a Blacks in Tech Business Forum, and he had a bunch of different brothers on and popped up, and Sub-Zero was on there talking about his academy, and I was like, okay, and so I listened to that, and it was about a 2-hour, back and forth with all the folks in that interview, and it just impressed upon me. I go randomly, okay, Erica Williams, she's interviewing Sub-Zero. O'Shea Jackson, Sub-Zero's on his panel, and he's talking about database development and how he's teaching people to get their skills in database development and get into IT. And I had been searching for a way to get back into IT because I graduated from college with a degree in electrical engineering, worked at Intel, worked at Hewlett Packard for almost 20 years. So I'd been in IT, but on the hardware side, not as a software developer. Mm-hmm. And through my journey after HP, got hit up when HP was doing all the massive layoffs, and I got caught up in that. And then was trying to get back into the IT industry, and I was kind of, hitting a lot of roadblocks. I think a lot of it was ageism, because I'd been almost 20 years in the game. HP, they just flat out were only focused on hiring new college hires, because they had a big thing that their workforce was heavily, high percentage of their workforce was 45 and plus. Uh-huh. And so they were, reinventing their workforce with, focused on new college hires, and a lot of the industry was doing that at that time. So I was running into a lot of those obstacles. That's like, I've got all this, this experience and this background, and why the hell can't I, land a job? And so that led me into, doing my own thing, and just, doing handyman work. But I always had that thing, I wanted to get back into IT, mm-hmm. And so after seeing those two videos, Sub had left his contact information, and that Sunday when I got finished at work, came home, and I hit him, called him thinking, okay, I'll leave a voicemail message, and he answered the phone right away. I told him, I saw him on a couple videos, and I'm interested. When's your next class start up? He told me, hey, my next class is starting up in February, and this was like early early January. So I told him, I said, hey, I want to get in the class. What's the cost? What do I need to do to be prepared? He told me the book, the T-SQL, book to get, and um, and install the software if you can, and we start on this date. So I got the book, installed all the T-SQL software, the SSIS, the whole stack. I installed it, started watching some YouTube videos, and I had done in the past, some SQL, some coding, and so I had some familiarity with it, but I literally hadn't touched it. I mean, in probably 7 or 8 years. So it was, fundamentally, I understood, for loops and things like that, but hadn't coded in a long time. And so the class started up, and we just, I just jumped right into the class. We formed a study group. I was in multiple study groups, and some of them, they were hit and miss, and it ended up being probably about 10 of us out of a couple different study groups that kind of came together and formed our study group. And we just, we just rocked, 7 days a week. So, we had class, class was, I think 3 or 4 days a week. And then the Saturday sessions. And then on the days off that we didn't have class, our study group, Sunday evenings, and then like 2 or 3 times a week, we all just, we got together and just kind of set a curriculum, and we just studied. We held each other accountable. I was kind of that person in the group to, hey, this is what we're going to study. This is what we went over last week in subs class. This is some stuff we, different people found. Let's start testing each other and kind of, grilling each other in the study group. And we just made a commitment. We weren't going to let it go. And so we just rocked, that whole time, holding each other accountable. Anybody that was, hey man, you weren't in class the last couple of days, what's going on? I had, this is going on in my personal life. Life happens with folks. And so we kind of had this mantra in our study group, nobody left behind. And we just kept on each other, and holding each other accountable and encouraging each other. And, some folks dropped and, came back, a month later, and we, they're like, hey, this happened, or I had to pick up extra shifts. I couldn't, what's going on in class? And then we would some of us would break off and help to fast track those folks to get them back with us. And we just, we formed a real tight knit group. And to this day, that same study group, we formed a business intelligence group on Facebook.
Hey, that is just beautiful, man. And for the people listening to this interview, put a pin in it. The power of a study group, holding each other accountable. And the fact that a study group doesn't have to even be a gang of 10 people. A study group can just be
2 people.
It could be 2 people. And I know it's Sunday. I don't mean to get biblical, but the Lord says, where 2 or more are gathered, I too shall be there. So put a pin in that, you guys, how the importance of study groups, and that really, it really reduces your learning curve, and especially, and it's just healthy when, you even get into a little competition with whoever you're working with, that you're trying to retain this, you're trying to explain, your viewpoint is something and why it may be a little bit more on point than the other. All that stuff is important in your growth as far as really understanding these concepts. So when did you complete your training with Lifting the Veil? When you finally finished the last interview and you felt like you were ready to, to take on the world, so to speak.
Let's see here, that we had started in that class in that February, it was 2019. I think it was 2019. So went through until the like after July, when we finished the class. I finished my interviews with sub, the SQL, SSIS, SSRS. I think it was around in September.
September 29th.
Yeah, because I went failed the sequel the first time, went back, studied like crazy, passed it the second time. It was probably about 2 or 3 weeks later, passed. Went through SSIS, failed it the first time, passed the second time, and then SSRS. I passed SSRS on my first interview with them. And then had my resume together, started getting out and interviewing. But it was right, late fall, and that's typically when companies are slow to hire, and so I just kept interviewing and kept doing my handyman work, and then things opened up that following January, and I landed my first role in things like I started like January 15th. It was a short 4-month contract as a SQL developer. Got in there. The work environment was similar to what, because I'd been in the corporate world, so I was kind of used to that. But made it through that first assignment. Completed that one. They didn't extend me, and then they said, hey, 2 weeks, your project's going to be done. So I reached out to the recruiting agency that had placed me to let them know, hey, I'm looking for a new gig. This one's going to be up in 2 weeks. And so in that last 2 weeks on my lunch breaks, I was interviewing for my next assignment, and landed an assignment. And so when my first one ended on that Friday, I had a week off, and then like the next Monday, I had started on my new assignment. It was another SQL developer role. That one, and this was right when I was in the office for like a couple of weeks, and then COVID started exploding, and then we went remote, and then that one was I had this weird vibe with the manager that I was working with, and just out of the blue, he just I got a call from the agency, and they said, hey, he said things aren't working. I'd literally been on the job 3 weeks.
Wow.
And Friday's gonna be your last day. And I was like, what the hell? And so I just, she said, hey, I've got some more, I'm gonna send you over some more job recs. And I said, okay, bet. She sent them over to me. I looked at them, applied for them, interviewed, and I got a position as an ETL developer. And so on my first 2 gigs, I was making like mid 40s an hour. And then I got this ETL job, and that was $50 an hour. It was a 3-month project. They were onboarding some dental offices. The company was expanding, and so they had an old SQL database, but they were building a data warehouse, and they needed some folks to come in and help build data pipelines they were onboarding 20 dental offices. And so I came on, worked with their senior developer who was designing and implementing the data warehouse. And she'd been in IT like 20 something years as a developer, super skilled. She taught in that 3-month assignment. I learned a lot, and I was open with her. I said, hey, I haven't done much ETL. I've been a SQL developer. And she goes, okay, well, she asked me a question, and she goes, tell me you don't know. I'd rather you tell me you don't know something, and then I can teach you, as opposed to, she goes, I've had other developers that I'd give them a ticket, and do you understand this? And they'd say yes. And then I'd come back a week later, and they hadn't done anything because they didn't know it. So, she goes, don't be afraid to say you don't know something.
Dude, that is a blessing. That's a blessing.
It was a blessing.
To have somebody like that holding your hand, and somebody that's transparent and that wants to help you move forward. And that's one thing that I talk to with my study group often about, is that whole soft skill stuff. That if you come humble, and and you may not know everything about everything, but but you're also deprecating and complimentary of
Yeah.
are complimentary of the person that you're dealing with. That, you know, sometimes, like, you know how they used to say in the old days, you catch more flies with honey than you do vinegar. It's like
Exactly.
that. You know, people like their ego stroke, and it's not like you really, you know, kissing their behind, but you know what? I really appreciate that and compliment them. Man, I was, you know, complimenting them on their skill set, all that kind of stuff, where you every once in a while you throw out one of those little, you know, plaudits, you know, hey, you know, I mean, it's like, that was excellent how you did that, you know, stuff like that. You know, I appreciate you, you know, taking the time to kind of show me this. And, you know, I learned this and I was able to get this because of the extra time you spent with me. All
Yep.
those things, man, it makes people want to pour into you. And I imagine, because I could just your personality, I know that you probably had that in a lot of circumstances where people they were inspired to teach you what they know because, you know, because of your spirit, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so how many interviews did you go through before you finally landed, you know, your that first contract? Or if you don't want to mention the first contract, the first like gig where you stuck and stayed, you know what I mean? How many interviews would you say you've been through before you ended up, because you've mentioned that you've been on a couple of contract gigs and stuff like that, and you may be on something longer term or permanent or whatever, but I'm just trying to get an idea of how many interviews did you actually go through before you got to that desired position, you know, because yours may be a little different than most of the other interviews I've done, because most other interviews, it's this their first job, you know what I mean? But you kind of have been through a little bit of a different journey. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
get an idea of the amount of interviews. That's something I get asked all the time. How many interviews did they have before they finally landed this job, you know? So
For me on the first one, it was, I probably had, you know, not counting the initial, you know, phone screen with the recruiter, you know, where you're at, you know, when you get past that stage. For my first assignment, I probably had 6 or 7, 8 interviews.
uh-huh.
Yeah, before I got that first one, on this my longest, you know, term contract was a year. So after that ETL developer
Yeah.
job, I landed a job as a data analyst with a local company here in Sacramento, and that one was I interviewed with a bunch of different places. So there's probably 5 or 6 interviews before I landed that job, and that was a year-long contract. And that role just ended uh, July of this year. So, you know, that was right through the peak of COVID. This past calendar year. This my contract that I'm on right now. To land this one, I probably had, I think it was four interviews with different companies, and then, you know, I landed this short-term assignment that I'm on right now.
Okay, so mainly your experience has been through recruiters. You did mention that you were
Yeah,
from Sacramento, California, just so I already know that, but just so that you guys that are listening will know which
yeah,
area of the country that Tony's from.
yeah.
Um,
The,
huh?
the best. My advice is, you know, because you put your resume out on Dice and all the job boards, you get, you know, a ton of email traffic, and you know, a lot of those are, you know, not saying anything disparaging, but a lot of them are, you know, are Indian recruiters, because, you know, the industry is, you know, is dominated by, you know, the Indian culture, and they, from my experience, they tend to like to hire their own,
Yeah.
uh, and so my best connections, and actually all my assignments that I've landed have all been through Robert Half and Randstad,
Okay.
two
All
big
right.
IT recruiting companies.
All right. You guys put a pin in that. Robert Half and Randstad.
And Randstad,
Put a
yeah.
pin. Put a pin in that. Um, Okay, so can you talk about some notable experience that you've had on the interview trail? Was there any particular line of questioning during the interview process that kind of stood out to you? That, you know, one that may be notable that comes to mind right away when I mention, you know, maybe some consistent line of questioning that there's a thread from one interview to the next, to the next, to the next, that is a constant that you recognize the pattern?
Yeah, I'd say kind of the common thread, with the space that we're in. Of course, SQL. There, I've worked as a SQL developer, ETL developer, reports developer, data analyst, and I've worked as a business analyst. And in all those different spaces, all those different spaces that I've been in, SQL number one. How much you understand SQL, the fundamentals. I mean, I haven't gotten any real hardcore, super complex stuff, but the basics of SQL, knowing the basic constructs of SQL, how do you filter data to get a data set that you need to work with for a report, for example. Knowing your joins, joins are all, I don't think I've had one interview where they haven't asked, all the joins, asked, kind of the differences between temp tables, CTEs, structures of data warehouses, understanding what a fact table and dimension table are, because almost every environment you work in, the data is going to be stored in a data warehouse, and so they're gonna want to know that that you understand, okay, you're going to be querying data from a data warehouse, or writing records into a data warehouse, understanding how to how critical joins are, the different types of joins, how those will create record sets that you need for whatever analysis that you're doing. So those are kind of the common ones that I've seen through majority of my interviews. Window functions, knowing what the window, was it five? I think it's 5 or 6 different window functions. Those are the kind of common themes that I've seen in interviews that I've had. They want to know that you kind of just you understand how to manage data, because in the space that we're in, it's everything's driven by data. How do you get data from one source? How do you move it to a database? How do you manipulate that data and store it in a data warehouse?
Yeah, I want to roll us back about in regards to your SSIS exposure. And SSIS is a huge one, because that's one of the ones that, everybody, that's kind of, that would be kind of the one that people will be looking for the exits. And in LTV, when we hit SSIS, because SSIS, if you just don't have any experience, it can be really a toughie. And I know you said you failed it the first time before you passed it. I failed it twice before I finally passed it. And obviously I haven't been on it, in a minute, but I just wanted to get your insights on, you said you landed that job as an ETL developer. And at that point, when you accepted that job, where would you have ranked your understanding of ETL to where, your confidence, that you can, you can pretty much handle, whatever they was going to throw at you or whatever? Where was your relative knowledge base? Where would you, if you had to rank that between, let's say, 1 and 10, as far as your understanding of SSIS, because that is really that's the tough one, getting through LTV is SSIS. Where would you rank your confidence, your understanding, all that stuff in regards to SSIS?
SSIS, I'd probably rank myself a 7.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So you got that kind of control and confidence over it, because
and so with SSIS, I really hit that one really, really hard. In class. I was the one that in our group that every section that we learned in SSIS, I learned by putting my hands on things, and so I was the one that would grab the different tasks, and I'd create a Word document and write out every single step in the process flow of how the we'll use this for the, for this kind of situation. And so uh, that one was, that helped me a lot. And, failing in the interview the first time, I thought when I interviewed with Sub, I was like, okay, I know I'm gonna smoke this. I got it down. And he hit me with some stuff that
Yeah.
he stumped me on. And so I just literally for 2 weeks just went, got really deep into SSIS. And it's funny, the thing that landed me that ETL developer job in the interview, their lead engineer asked me, she goes, we've got this scenario in our environment where we're pulling data in from different databases, and we get this particular lob error, and it's that comes across, sometimes the data comes across with a character in it that causes the transformation to fail. And she goes, how would you handle that?
Data conversion.
And I said, well, typically you do it the data conversion, but, and I said, but, I said, but another, shop that I had been in, they were big on, they were teaching all the developers to have as clean as possible ETL design, the least components, the better. And I said, they taught us, instead of, they were like, we don't want to see data conversion tasks in the process flow. Do it in the connection manager. So I explained to her, I said, in the connection manager, you go here, you go, kind of, guided her where you would go in the connection manager. I said, you can set up your data conversion in the connection, inside the connection manager to handle that kind of, especially if that kind of error is common, you can define it in the data, not in the data flow, but within the connection manager itself to handle that lob error coming from that Oracle database. And she told me when I got hired, first day on the job, she goes, you want to know the main reason I hired you? And I said, what's that? She goes, how you answered that question about the lob error coming in from the Oracle databases and how you manage it in the connection manager versus in the data manager. She goes, that's exactly how I was taught. And you answered it exactly. As soon as you answered that question, I looked at the manager and said, we're hiring him. Because she goes, 80% of this job is going to be managing those Oracle databases, and that lob error comes up all the time. And you told me you know how to do it. So that I told him we need to hire him. So knowing that one piece got me that job.
Put a pin in that, you guys. Listen to that. Wow, that was great. I'm glad I went back. Hey, that one's for you, Ian. When you watch this, because Ian is always asking me about SSIS and this and that. But
and Ian starts his job on Monday.
What?
Ian Roberts. Are you talking about Ian Roberts?
No, I don't know if I don't even know what Ian's last name is. I know he's from the UK and he lives in Los Angeles. So maybe
different Ian, because this Ian lives in Detroit.
No, this is a different Ian.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so I guess what industry, as far as a job that you're currently working in, or if there's a common if there's a common a common industry of the jobs that you're working in, like ETL job, a SQL developer job in manufacturing, or is it something that's business or whatever? What are some of the industries that your roles have been in?
Let's see here. My roles have been, majority of them have been healthcare.
Okay.
That ETL developer role was in a fleet of children's dental health. So we're managing healthcare data for the dental industry. Other one was the year-long assignment was with they were a company that competed for federal government contracts. And they were awarded a bunch of contracts to stand up when COVID happened and the mass impact on mass layoffs and the overload of the federal or the unemployment systems, this company had been awarded a bunch of different state and federal contracts to stand up cloud compute. They had a software as a service solution that they used, and it was there were Oracle databases connected to call center applications. So it was a way for them to quickly stand up call centers, and that was a big need when unemployment was, systems were overloaded all over the U.S. So they in a couple of weeks we could stand up call centers and have plug in several hundred call center agents remotely, train them, have them online, handling, taking that off that demand of calls coming in of folks registering for unemployment. And at the same time, it was we were doing COVID contact tracing and contact investigating. So it was all that data collection around people coming into the unemployment system, getting their benefits, all the call center agent performance metrics, that were in the contracts, and then on the back end, folks that were being exposed to COVID, they had a process for those for the agents to reach out to them, find out who they were, who they had been around, reach out to those folks, explain to them that hey, you might have been exposed to COVID, call this phone number, get to this doctor, get checked, all that data coming back, and and doing the contact investigating. So that's what that industry was around. And then my latest contract that I'm on, it's with Placer County, and it's human health and services. They've got all their field agents were going out in the field. They're still on paper and pen when they would go to do house visits, and then scanning that information when they get back to the office into a system. And this project that we're on is digitizing all those 250 forms. We're digitizing the forms. The forms are going to be on mobile devices, and so when they go out to the client, they'll be able to digitally have all those forms filled out, upload them to the cloud. My job is creating all the databases that house all that information. So in this role, I'm working as a DBA, doing database administration, creating the databases, creating all the tables, and then all the working with the reports developers on all the reports that are needed for this project. So that's in health and family welfare. So it's on the health side, and I like that space. I'm actually down to a final interview for a operations data analyst with Kaiser Permanente.
This is a permanent position.
This is a permanent position. Yeah. So I should be hearing hopefully within a week. The last I heard from the recruiter, out of the pool of people, we'd gone through 3 interviews. There were 8 of us, and it's down to 2. So myself and one other person that it's down to right now for that position.
Well, good luck, man. Because it sounds like you're enjoying what you're doing, and that,
Oh, I do. I do, man.
You're not doing it just for a check. You're doing it because you've kind of found a niche. You've kind of found your groove in the industry, something that makes you feel good, probably something that makes you feel like you're really contributing, and you're not only taking. Of course, you got to get compensated for what you do, but it's always that much better when you feel good about it and you feel like you're making some type of a difference and you're getting paid. You can't really ask much more than that.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that I've in my past life in IT on the hardware side, working for different companies, it was break fix supporting products that they were selling them for profit. And I like the healthcare industry because you're using your analytical skills to work on process improvements that impact quality of service to people coming into the healthcare system. And so it's the industry has a lot to do with developing software solutions. So you'll hear SaaS, software as a service, and they're building, like Kaiser, for example, they're building analytical tools with all of their software. Epic is their database. Kaiser is the biggest healthcare provider. They've been using Epic for the longest. So they've got the biggest, set of aggregate data on healthcare than anybody in the industry. And they're using all that healthcare data to improve their internal processes. And then they actually develop products, software solutions that they then sell into the healthcare industry to other providers to help them implement, new services and solutions to drive down cost, to improve the quality of healthcare for their clients. That's the kind of stuff that I like, because you're actually benefiting your community.
Yeah. Well, you guys, this probably will be an interview that you will have to listen to a few times, because there's a lot of things to pull out, which actually you answered a whole bunch of questions that I was going to ask you in regards to, what you did as far as your role and responsibilities, or the predominant role and responsibilities in the different roles that you've had. You've answered all that. And I guess that would go into, it would kind of be, this question will probably be kind of hard to ask you in regards to what were some of the requirements on the actual job requisitions that you apply for, because you've been in a few different places and it probably was a lot of different job requirements in the job recs. You know what I mean? You know how they have that things must have 8 years of SQL development experience, 3 years ETL, all that kind of stuff. So I don't, that would be an appropriate question to ask, since you kind of have been in a few different situations, and it probably would encompass a lot. But I think we can pull enough out of the conversation of the things that you actually did in your roles that you can come to, the conclusion that this must have been on the job rec or whatever. But I guess I will ask this: was there anything on the job requisitions that you saw that you knew was above your head, and you just said, you know what, I'm just going in with what I got, and if I get the job, I'll figure it out. You know what I mean? The sub says all the time that, that requisition list is like a wish list.
It's a wish list of their unicorn.
Because who's walking around with all 10 of these particular responsibilities that isn't, this particular skill set that isn't already working? You know what I mean? So how do you feel about that? What comments would you have to put out there regarding these ridiculous looking job requisitions where you got to have 8 years of this and 5 years of this and this degree and that degree and all this stuff? What do you have to say about that?
I tell folks, the big thing is, like Sub always says, do what he says. Apply. When you're coming out, look for those jobs that are asking for 2, 3, 4 years experience. Apply for them, because you never know. If you limit yourself, you're kind of pigeonholing yourself. Even though I've been in IT for a while, I'll look at job recs, and some of them, they're looking for somebody that's got 7, 8, 9 years of ETL experience. I'm like, well, I've only got a couple years. I'm applying for it, because you got to think that a lot of people that are in your shoes will look at those job recs. They're looking at those postings just like you are, and they're going to go, oh, I don't check every box, I'm not going to apply for it. Whereas I was looking at it going, well, I checked 3 of the 10 boxes, I'm applying for it. Let them tell me.
Stop right there. Pin that, you guys. Listen to what he's saying right there. That was some game that you just dropped right there about people are looking at the same thing you're looking at, and they're canceling themselves out because they don't have, all of this experience that's stated. And I just personally, I just don't think it's a lot of people walking around with that skill set anyway. You know what I mean? For the amount of jobs out there. But go ahead, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that struck a chord when you said that. Continue.
Oh yeah, and I've had recruiters hit me up and go, hey, I looked at your, I saw your information on LinkedIn. I got this job rec that put your resume through on, but they're asking for somebody that's got 8 years of SQL development. I see you've got 4 to 5 years, but I know this client, and there's a lot of folks that they need somebody in this position, and they might be willing. I think they're willing to take somebody, you know. And like this recruiter told me, she goes, they're always looking for the unicorn, that perfect person.
Yeah.
She goes, that perfect person doesn't exist.
Yeah.
She goes, we find a lot of candidates that have, you know, maybe 3, 4, 5 years less than what the job rec is asking for, and we submit them, they interview well, and they get hired. So, you know, hey, I think you got a good shot at getting, you know, at least getting an interview. Are you interested? And I'm always up for, you know, interviewing, because,
Yeah.
you know, and that's another thing, folks. Always be interviewing, because the more you interview, you're building up your strength, and you're building up your story, and it's your mental strength. You know, when you're interviewing, the more you interview, the stronger you feel. And because you get a lot of the repetitive kinds of questions over and over, and you're like, okay, man, I blew that interview. Okay, they asked me these things I didn't know. And then you'll go off and you study those things and sharpen that up. Record your interviews, record all your interviews, take those recordings back to sub, and he will just like a, you know, a basketball coach, or, you know, a sports coach. You look at game film, and they review the game film with you and go, hey, do this, you know, in this position, do this different, do it like this. And then you do it like that. And then the same thing in an interview. You might stumble on some questions, you know the answers, but you verbally can't get it out in a way that they feel confident that you're confident.
Okay.
Oh, you got to just always be interviewing, because it sharpens your skills, it gives you more confidence. And if you can, you know, exude confidence over the phone, you know, 9 times out of 10, even if you're confident and you don't have all the years of experience they're looking for, you'll be shocked how many times you'll get a phone call back where you're like, man, I didn't do well on that interview. A week goes by and you get a phone call, hey, they want to offer you the job.
Wow. All right. All right. So if you don't mind, since this is another question that I get asked a lot, what type of salary range are you? 55 to 64, 65K to 74K, 75 to 85, or over 85K a year?
That I've attained,
Yeah.
or looking for. Oh, well, one thing, I live in California,
Yeah.
so salaries are higher out here because, you know, because the cost of living is higher.
Uh,
Every developer job that I've had, my lowest hourly rate has been 46 an hour.
okay.
Is the
So that
lowest.
equates to about 80, probably about
But
87, 88.
yeah, mid 80s, mid 80s and annual salary. Other jobs that I've interviewed for, and, you know, got, you know, made it through multiple rounds, didn't get selected, you know, for the job. Um, I've, you know, salary range has been 100 to 120,000 a year range. You know, those are, you know, full benefit type jobs.
Okay, so basically, you're in that over 85K, you know, pretty
Oh,
much
safely,
that range.
yeah.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna shut this down and close this out by just, you know, giving some words of advice and encouragement that you would like to share with the students that will see this video or this interview.
My words of advice are, first things first, like, you know, sub and your teachers will tell you, you know, follow, you know, it's got a process that works. You know, follow the process. You know, just like anything else as a coach, you know, they're going to tell you, follow this system that I've put in place. And if you stick to the system, and like I tell folks, if you never give up, the only thing that can happen is for you to succeed. You know, folks will give up. You know, life happens. You know, things are going to happen along the way through the class that, you know, students are going to, you know, pull away. But the thing is, if you stick to the course and make a commitment to this, it's challenging. It's uncomfortable for a lot of folks. And when the thing I always tell people is, when you're in an uncomfortable situation, stay uncomfortable. dig into it. You know, just make that commitment. Like when I got in the class, I was, doing independent handyman work. I was working probably about 50 hours a week. But I would, I told my wife, I said, hey, I'm going to finish this. And so it was a lot of times, I'm up till 2 a.m, falling asleep at my desk, just, you got to be hungry for it. And because it will literally change your life. I mean, I went from making, 20, 25 bucks an hour doing physical labor to making,
Double
40,
that.
40,
Using
50 bucks an hour
working
sitting.
from your head up,
Yeah, working with my
head
head
up.
instead of my hands and my back.
Uh,
And so everybody that hears this video, everybody that sees Sub's videos and has an inkling, the inkling gets in your mind about, hey, let me look into this. That's God telling you, I'm gonna change your life. And if you just have to just stay dedicated. Big thing is get it, form a study group. Even like Fred said, even if it's just you and one other person that say, hey, we're gonna rock this together and hold each other accountable, push each other, you'll make it through. Because if you don't give up, you have the only other opportunity you have when you don't give up is success. So don't give up. Everybody that comes in this space, you've got what it takes to make it through and change you and your family's lives.
all right, you guys. That was some good game that you guys are gonna hear. Tony, man, thanks for coming on and spending some time on a Sunday morning.
I appreciate
talking
it.
about your journey, and your experience. And and I know this is one that's probably gonna have to be watched a couple of times. I know I'm gonna go back myself and watch this a couple of times, just to pull out those nuggets. And this is one that you probably want to maybe take some notes on. Watch it and stop it, slow it down, take some notes. I always end these types of interviews with this. And there was a guy that was in there was a guy that was in the LTV program. His name was Kevin Harley, and he was a DBA, and he was trying to learn the development skills to add to his DBA employment, to kind of raise his price tag. And unfortunately, he passed away a couple weeks away. And he was also in my little basic SQL study group class or whatever. And I just like to just always say, I know that a lot of you guys probably didn't know him, never talked to him, but that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to raise his game. And he's no longer here, unfortunately, to do this. And so carve out a little piece of your journey in his memory and finish what he couldn't finish, and I just like to end it like that. So rest in peace, Kevin. And we still all down here working, but I'm gonna go ahead and end it right.
Make him proud.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tony.
Hey, you're welcome, Fred. Thank you, man.